Okay, so I'm Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series CPS the Horror Stories. And the reason that I decided to do this show is to just reveal the truth of CPS and all of the damage that this department does to families, how they literally kidnap children, they remove children from loving parents and family members, and they place them in a system, and it's all because it is a billion-dollar industry. So again, the reason for the show isn't just to reveal the truth about CPS, which stands for Child Protective Services for people who don't know what that is. And it is called different names in different places like DCFS and other names. But this is also for family members who have gone, are going through, and don't even know about this stuff. Just to show that you can be completely innocent and never have done a thing to deserve your children removed. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, your kids are kidnapped and gone. So with me today is Erica. Erica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erica. My case was out of Shasta County in California.
And what do you do for work? And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 31 years old. I'm a caregiver. I took care of hospice patients who had, not everybody knows that if you're on hospice, you have to have 6 months or less to live. So I took care of dying people, dying elderly, like cancer patients or whatever.
Okay.
And I also managed a gas station at one point.
Nice. And how many children do you have?
I say had because they terminated my rights, but I have one daughter. She's 1.5 years old.
Okay, so this is all recent because she's only 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So my first question to most parents is, was CPS involved in your life as a child when you were a child?
Nope, not at all.
Okay. Is the father involved with the baby?
She's being adopted by her dad's mother.
Okay.
He had his rights terminated also. We had originally tried to work the case together because we were still together, but we're not together. He was in prison when he was born.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. What happened and how and when did CPS become part of your life?
Okay, so I'm a type 2 diabetic, so I have diabetes before pregnancy, after pregnancy, during pregnancy, I have diabetes. And I was living in Placer County, and I had moved from Placer to Shasta because that's where I had family, and I wanted, family to be there or whatever. So I had switched to the maternity clinic out there, and I needed insulin, and they had put my first prenatal appointment out there, weeks in advance, and I needed insulin now. So February 10th, I had went to Mercy Medical Center, Dignity Health, and I went to their labor, whatever, delivery, because I needed insulin. And so I went into the hospital to get the insulin, and they put me on the insulin or the drip, whatever, to get them because my diabetes was really high. And they put me on, so they admitted me, to get my sugar levels down and stuff. And they did the 24-hour fetal heart monitoring. They did a biophysical profile, perfect. Everything was good, and it just so happened there was this big, huge snowstorm in Shasta County those few days. It started on the 10th, and I had a bunch of stuff outside, and it was all getting ruined by the snowstorm. And so they were going to discharge me anyways, but I just didn't wait for the paperwork to be done. You know, I already knew what they ordered me my insulin to the pharmacy, you know, so I checked myself out, I left, and I, you know, went and took care of my business with my stuff in the snow, and I had got my insulin. They had prescribed me some weird insulin pens that you have to have like a weird needle for it, and so I could never even use insulin. And I had been clean my entire pregnancy. Like when I found out I had stopped using, I was clean my whole pregnancy, and then I had relapsed around February 10th, you know, around that time when I didn't have my insulin. Because when you're diabetic, you have very, like, if you don't have your diabetes under control, you're very lethargic, like no energy, you know, you just really feel like crap. And, you know, when you smoke methamphetamines, it kind of, you know, gives you more energy, makes you feel better. And I had relapsed. And when I went, so I had went back to the hospital February 15th, which is the day my daughter was born, 2 months early. I went back on the 15th because I still didn't have the needles. They never prescribed the little special needles to go on the thing. Even though I called them, I went down there in between the 10th and the 15th to try to get this prescription filled right, and they never did it. And then so I went in on the 15th. I had really bad heartburn. I was like constipated, and like, so I went in there, and then the social worker from the hospital, because they were going to drug test me. And so I just told them, instead of them having to drug test me, I told them what happened. You know, it's like I relapsed, you know, I know it wasn't the right thing to do. You know, maybe there's some programs you guys could help me with, basically, you know. And she was like, she had told me she'll see what she could do or whatever. And then she's like, kind of told me like, you know, basically told me like I was such a bad person, you know, for having done drugs while I was pregnant, you know. And I told her like not to worry about it, that it's not something that I was going to continue to do, you know. I had got a bad attitude with her, you know. And I think that's where it kind of started, like where they like just, I maybe had it in for me or something, because I told her like gave her a big attitude. And all of a sudden, you know, they're like, I got these other doctors coming in, they put like an ultrasound on my stomach, and they shook it two times, right? It was early morning, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I never felt her move in the morning time. Always evening is when she was very more active in my stomach. And they're like, oh, she's not waking up, you know, she's in fetal distress. And then all of a sudden they're telling me, they're like, oh, if you don't take her out right now, you know, she'll be dead by the end of the night. And I'm like, you know, whoa, like not even like 5 days ago, everything was perfect. Like how is that even possible? And like, they were just like telling me that. And then I was like, you know, I don't think that's, I want you guys to, you know, do more like assessments. Like she's not, I was like, I don't believe that, you know. And I didn't want to consent to that C-section. I did not. And I was like, and then her dad called every day around 12 p.m., you know, to talk to me from prison. And I was like, well, I really want to talk to her dad before I consent, you know, because it's his child too. And then they're like, oh, well, you don't have time. And they ended up getting a hold of his prison counselor. They pulled him out of his cell, whatever, and they let him call me. And he was like, you know, if the doctor says that's what you got to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay. So I did it. I consented to it. She was 2 months early. She was over 5 pounds. She was 5 pounds 1 ounce. 2 months early. Her APGAR score was 7.8. I'm not sure if most mothers probably know what an APGAR score is, especially if they had a child. They've probably seen them.
Go ahead and explain it, just in case.
An APGAR score is a scoring system, you know, that they at 7 or at 1 minute of life and at 5 minutes of life, you know, like their fetal tone, their, you know, breathing, just their overall, like, kind of like how well they're doing at 1 minute of life and 5 minutes of life. And an APGAR score 7 and 8 is a good score of a full-term healthy baby, you know, and she was 2 months early.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give the definition of it, just that way so people know. Appearance, pulse, grimace, activity, and respiration. So in the test, 5 things are used to check the baby's health. Each score on a scale is 0 to 2, with 2 being the best score. So the top would be 10, I believe, right?
Yes.
APGAR. Yeah, 10. So you said she was at an 8?
She got a 7. She got 7 at 1 minute, and then she had 8 at 5 minutes.
Okay, that's good.
And that's 2 months. That's, mind you, that's 2 months early, you know. And
Okay.
your lungs are not fully developed
Right.
when you're 2 months early, you know. So she was, you know, they put her on like this CPAP, like for like she was on like for not even a few hours. That's normal protocol for premature babies, is to put them on the CPAP and gradually just, you know, wing them into room temperature or to regular air, due to the fact that they're premature and their lungs are not fully developed. That's normal. They do it in any NICU, you know. But I didn't know that at first, and I was like, you know, I see this thing on my daughter, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. What did I do? You know, but turns out really all that's not the case. But they proceeded to put in the court papers that I did so much drugs while pregnant that she had to be resuscitated at birth. And I'm like, no, like she cried. I heard her cry. You know, there's no way she had to be resuscitated at birth, and I know that, you know. But this is what they put in the CPS reports because how she was at risk, you know. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I didn't actually, wasn't until like way after. They kept her in the NICU. Like, she was born February 15th. She was, when I pulled her medical records, the day they actually discharged her, because I was smart and to do that, I pulled her medical records that day. And I had subsequently went to go get them at another time, and they wouldn't allow me to have them, but I had already had them.
Did she get discharged?
So her medical records show that she was ready to be discharged February 22nd, but they didn't discharge her till March 18th.
When was she delivered?
February 15th.
So she was going to get to go home right away.
Yeah, and they held her in there. I didn't know that these things were, you know, I didn't know till after the fact. As with my entire case, I never got any attachments of evidence that they submitted with my court papers. When I got, you know, my papers, you know, that you're supposed to get however time before your court hearing, so that you can, you know, be prepared or whatever. Not one petition had the attachments of evidence that they had submitted with it. And I had asked for them. They're like, oh, you got to ask your attorney. And I'm like, okay. So I asked my attorney. Okay, so in my medical records, I mean, I admitted to it. That's where I messed up. I admitted to relapsing. So I guess there wasn't anything I could do, even though they didn't have a positive umbilical cord test on her, because during the surgery, they dropped the sample and they couldn't even run any tests on it. And so I knew this because it's right in my procedure operative report. And I went to my attorney and I'm like, hey, let me see this umbilical cord test. You know, she flashes me this like flow sheet thingy looking thing. And I'm like, that's not even a blood test. You know, that's a urine test. Like, I was like, I wanted to see my daughter's umbilical cord test. And she proceeds to tell me, I think you are high and I want you to leave my office. My attorney told me that she thought I was high and wanted me to leave her office. And mind you, this is when I went to go meet her before my contested jurisdictional hearing. And so then I never talked to her again after that, you know, about it. I show up to my jurisdictional hearing, like it's the contested one, and she tells me, she's like, what do you want me to do? Put you on the stand? And what do you want me to ask you? What do you want me to say? You know, you did drugs, you tested positive. There's nothing you could do, basically. And I'm like, you know, so like she talked me basically into not taking the stand during the jurisdictional contested whatever. So there wasn't even a contested jurisdiction at all. Not only that, they did the detention hearing was March 19th. They didn't schedule my jurisdictional hearing till May 7th. So I thought there was supposed to be like a 15-day like window between the detention and the jurisdiction. Okay, that was like 45 days before they, and then I had some old unresolved warrants in Santa Clara County, so I ended up getting arrested and going to jail for a month. And so I was in jail for the first one, so they set another one for, I think it was like May 29th or something like that. And I went to it, and then that's when they set it for the contested one. And I'm like, and when she told me, when my lawyer told me to leave her office because she thought I was high, I had literally just got out of jail for a month. I was so like sober, it was ridiculous. I went literally straight from jail in Santa Clara County to her office in Redding, California. And like, it was just so crazy. And so, you know, they say that you can't take a baby without a court order or warrant, you know, unless a police officer assesses the situation and determines that that baby's in imminent danger, right? So how is a baby in imminent danger who's in the NICU under the constant supervision of nurses? You know, that baby was not in imminent danger. I went to the police department to get that police report, and I was told I couldn't have that police report. I'm like, why? They're like, because it involves a minor. I'm like, yeah, but that minor's my child. That's my daughter, is the minor. Like, what do you mean? They're like, you have to petition the court to see it. So I never got to see it until recently, because I filed my writ petition to preserve my right to appeal my parental rights. So they put the record together and they sent it to my attorney. And I'm like, so I called the courthouse. I'm like, hey, where's this record at? Because I was expecting to receive it. She didn't file that. I filed it. And I didn't list her on there. I filed it. And they sent it to her. And then I ended up contacting her office to get the record. I went and I got it. And then I had got a letter like a few days before my termination of parental rights, which was just happened in March 20th. They terminated barely March 20th, but right after the COVID, or right before the COVID, or right after the COVID stuff, right in the, you know, in the middle of all that, like she sent me a letter, or no, it was, sorry, my rights were terminated July 11th. Sorry, that was, my reunification services were ended in March. So they terminated my rights in July 11th. I got a letter in the beginning of July from my attorney saying that basically she should have filed a JV 180 if I had anything new, like if I finished my drug class or my parenting class, which is the two things that I had to finish, was my parenting class and 1.5 months of outpatient, which I couldn't even do because one, the outpatient I was with, they shut down. They're no longer even a business anymore. And not only that, there was no meetings, there was nothing during the COVID-19. You know, I did a parenting class online, but they wouldn't accept it, even though, what was I going to do? They weren't hosting parenting classes. And when they dropped me from the parenting class, it's a 16-week program. They didn't even refer me to the program until October. So 16 weeks, and you can only miss 2 classes, or you have to restart it, and you have to wait till that 16 weeks is over to restart it. So like, therefore, like I missed 2 days and I had to restart, but by then, you know, my case, it's already over. Like, it's already over. And when I got that, a record of my appeal record, whatever the heck, they never, parenting classes, the triple positive parenting education was never a recommendation for my case plan. It was not even a recommendation. So really, in all actuality, all I had was the 1.5 months of outpatient. And I was testing clean towards the end of this whole thing. I struggled. I was like living on the streets, whatever. I have a house that I've been renting since November of last year. They never once came to look at my house. You know, they decreased all my visits. They just gradually decreased all my visits. Like, it's just, it's like they had their mind set up from day one. You know, anyways, back to the police report. Sorry, I got off track. Back to the police report. So the police report came in my appeal paperwork, whatever the heck. It came in there, and I'm looking at it, and I read it, and it says that I belligerently showed up to the hospital the day she was being discharged and attempted to take my baby from the NICU against CPS's plan. That no way. And if I was gonna do that, I would have did that way before that point in time. Like, I, I was there. I was actually there the entire weekend. I never even left. I never left that NICU that entire weekend. I knew they were gonna come get her that Monday. I knew it. I just, my motherly instincts told me that they, I knew they were. And they put me in. They let me go in this little room and this like with a recliner. They let me like hold her without the little monitors beeping things. And like I kind of, I fell asleep. I was like so tired. I was there like literally the whole weekend. I did not leave. And then I fell asleep, and then I kind of woke up around like 10 a.m. or whatever. And the main nurse lady for the NICU, the nurse manager, she comes in. She's like, "Hey, you want me to take your baby and change her, so you can go use the bathroom and eat, And I had just literally opened my eyes, like, so I wasn't even thinking. And because my original plan was to just never let her go. I was just not gonna let her go no matter what. And I wasn't thinking, I just handed her over, It's like, get up and, the NICU has a lock. Once you leave that, it's a locked door, you can't come back in without being buzzed in, calling in. And as soon as I walked out and that door closed and I turned, I see the CPS investigative worker there. And she was not in my hand. The baby was behind locked doors, Yeah. So like, I was like, I just started like crying, like hysterical. I was so hysterical, like, because they were taking my daughter. Who wouldn't be,
Right.
I was crying, and I was just like, no, you're not putting her in foster. Don't put her in foster care. Let the paternal grandmother take her then, because I didn't want her to, because she doesn't like me. She, I already knew that she wasn't gonna let me see the baby.
Yeah.
Like, she wasn't gonna be in support of reunification services. No, I already knew that. But I didn't want her to go with a stranger either. Like, that was I was like, I was like, don't let her go to foster care, don't let her go. That's all I was saying, and they were like, you need to calm down, you need to calm down. I'm like, how do you want me to calm down? They're taking my daughter, like,
yeah.
And they have the security escort me out of the hospital. They're like, if you don't leave the hospital right now, you're going to be arrested. And I'm like, so like the security takes me out of the hospital, crying and everything, and I get a phone call later, like, I don't know, like maybe 5 minutes later. The CPS worker's like, oh, the cop's here at the hospital. He made the police report. You were taking your daughter, whoop-de-whoop, and you'll have a court hearing, which I did on the 20th. Like, they took her. I think it was the 18th. They took her. They filed the petition the 19th, and my court date was on the 20th.
So let's go back, if you don't mind. Let's go back to day one. When you went into the hospital and you were pregnant. And they drug test. Well, they said they were going to drug test you, because they do drug test every pregnant parent.
Yeah, I just told them. I had. It was so like my grandma's birthday is on Valentine's Day, which was the day after my daughter was born. And my previous relationship that I was in for a really, really long time was with another female. Her birthday is the 16th. So my daughter was born right in between. Like, my grandma raised me, she's dead. And then, my heart was broken by this girl whose birthday was like the day after. I just had like, my boyfriend was in prison. It was like a huge mix of emotions, along with having no insulin. And, like, I made a mistake, I made a mistake, but I owned up to it. I owned up to that. Right. But because I owned up to it, I was punished for it instead of being helped, because I went in, like, I was truthful about it, I didn't try to hide it or nothing, and I think that was my biggest mistake. I could have just said I took Sudafed, like.
It makes me sad. I just,
like, you're not gonna help somebody.
We're human, and I'm not saying that it's okay for you to use drugs, but I feel like if you want the opportunity to stop, and there is opportunity to go to rehab and get help, and you're willing to take it, I feel people should have a chance.
Multiple times I told my worker to put me in rehab, because I was on the streets and I was struggling, and I asked her multiple times to put me in rehab. And what she told me? She said, because my drug and alcohol assessment didn't recommend inpatient, only recommended outpatient, that they couldn't provide me with inpatient rehab services. And so I told her, I was like, so you're telling me that I'm enough of a drug addict for you to take my kid from me, but not enough of a drug addict for you to put me in rehab?
Why? What is that assessment?
Because they had me do a drug and alcohol assessment.
What does that mean? I've never had one.
So you go with a drug and alcohol like clinician or whatever they are, and they ask you questions and they assess you on how bad of a basically drug addict, what's your risk level, like is this person like a high user, where they maybe like, I don't know exactly, I know I scored moderate. They have different categories, like they have like the stimulant and then the like, like the drugs were like downers or whatever, but I scored like a moderate. I was like, I'm a mild drug abuser, a moderate drug, mild, moderate, and like high risk or whatever. I scored, I guess, moderate. They recommended only 6 months of outpatient and drug testing.
Wow.
Random testing. But multiple times I asked her to put me in rehab. They had a great program that they could have put me in where my daughter could have eventually came and stayed there with me at the program. I asked her multiple times.
You know what's crazy to me is, in order to go to rehab, I thought, so my ex-husband is a meth user, and he finally decided to go to rehab. And it blew me away because he was telling me that the rehab, so they didn't have a bed available when he was wanting to go. And so he was put on a list, but he really wanted to get clean, like starting that day. And the wait was only going to be like a couple days to a week, and he was telling me that, so let's say it's Monday and meth only stays in your system like 3 days or so. And let's say the bed opens up on Friday. If he stops using on Monday, and when they drug test him on Friday, if he didn't have any in his system, they would have denied his spot. And it blows my mind away that if you're not using at that moment, but you've been using for years and you need help, and you're ready to get help, you have to be on them that day for them to admit you as a patient.
It's crazy. I mean, you don't take somebody who is struggling with an addiction, you take their child and essentially put them through the most horrific pain that anybody can go through, and take their baby and then kick them out there and say, hey, go get clean. Don't do drugs. When 9 out of 10 times, most drug addicts are going to tell you their reason for doing drugs is probably some kind of emotional issue that they have, or even a medical issue, which I think a lot of mine was that too. Not having my insulin, just feeling like crap, and it made me feel better, honestly.
Yeah.
But like California law, I've studied, I've read so much on everything. Shasta County, where I'm at, they have a higher rate of foster care per capita than the entire state of California, just in Shasta County. And it's like, California law, whatever legislator, whatever states that you cannot base the ability of a parent to provide regular care and support for their child based upon their drug use alone. There has to be something else with that. And not only that, they don't want people taking babies from, mothers like this, because they're gonna not seek prenatal care, and not getting prenatal care is worse for the baby than actually doing drugs while pregnant. Because they're not, and you know what? If I got pregnant again, how absolutely terrified I would be to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And that was like California's main point. Was like, you're going to terrify all these mothers. They're not going to seek prenatal care, and the outcome is going to be much, much worse. Than working with these mothers. Actually helping them. You're not going to help anybody by taking their child. like
And
that. Like, especially their first child, like,
right.
My placenta pathology showed no signs of drug abuse, no signs of eclampsia, which they tried to claim. Like this, I don't know if it's because the county is so tight knit, within the court system, the hospital system, like literally the hospital, Dignity Health, in our mall in Shasta County, they have freaking big old billboards, Dignity Health, become a foster parent, billboard in the mall. Like, I've never seen that anywhere before in my life. Like, advertisements on walls in the mall for foster children and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
I wanted to touch on when you said about stress and using drugs. So I've never touched a drug in my life. I used to be very judgmental on people that would use drugs. Not mean, just like, I don't understand how somebody can use drugs, type of thing. When I lost my children, that was the first time in my life I was like, I understand why people use drugs. It was the first time in my life I felt like if they were in front of me, I would have done anything to get rid of that pain. And my judgment, my judging attitude was gone like that. And my heart for people, for the reason of there's something, it's not, I mean, yes, there is a percent of people, I feel like it could be a tiny percent that choose to do it because they're partying, but most of the people that are doing drugs is because they're doing something to get rid of that pain and hurt of whatever it is. So, okay, so you get tested, or you tell them, hey, I used. So then you do have a C-section, you said?
Yeah, they forced me to have a C-section. They tried to give me, they tried to give me, this is like how, like, how well I know myself. Like, I'm not, doing drugs is not okay. I'm not saying that is okay at all. That's not what I mean, but like, I knew, like, they try to prescribe me, or they would try to give me Norcos after the surgery. And I told them that I didn't want them because I knew that I had an addictive personality, and I don't want Norcos. I don't want no kind of opiates. No, I don't do that. Like, I know. I've seen what it does to people, and I won't do it. I will not take a painkiller like that. I was like, give me some Tylenol. That's good. They're like, are you sure you can handle the pain? I'm like, I'll deal with it, I don't want them. And they still proceeded to prescribe me an entire bottle upon release of these Norcos, which I still didn't take. I don't know why they wanted to put that in my system, or I don't know what it was. They had my baby, didn't have no withdrawal symptoms whatsoever. None, and they had her in the NICU in this little separate little room with like 5 other babies that were being weaned off heroin. And multiple times I was confused with using heroin. I've never done heroin in my entire life.
Yeah.
Multiple times they were confusing me like that. The hospital had even sent me to the MAT clinic, which is like a medically assisted program to get people off heroin and opiates and stuff like that. And I did an initial assessment there, and that guy was like, what are you doing here? This is not the program that you were supposed to be in. He gave me a number for another place that I had went, which was Right Road, the one that's closed down or whatever. But I was in that NICU every day. That there was nothing about me or anything that would, suggest that I would abuse my daughter, or that I was going to be neglectful. These other mothers that had these babies born on heroin were nowhere to be found. You didn't see them. And these babies are having to have, the volunteer baby rockers come in, to soothe them and stuff. like, because their parents literally were not there. And I was in that NICU every day. I pretty much made sure I was there for every feeding because I wanted to be the one to feed her. I didn't get a breastfeed, nothing.
That was so weird. It like completely shut the sound off and everything. Okay, I'm so sorry because it happened right when you were talking about in the beginning when I asked about the C-section and stuff. Or, yeah, you had the C-section. So when did the social worker first come into your life? Before you had the baby or after?
It was right, like, when they were telling me that I had to have her, that I had to consent to have her by a C-section. And when they did my CPS intake interview, they literally questioned me before I had even seen my daughter. I'd never even seen her yet, and I'm, being told all that basically I'm this horrible person and what I did, and, I had to have my baby 2 months early and all this stuff because I, did drugs, for like a couple of days during, that week or whatever, which I already felt horrible about, and like this lady comes in to question me, about my stability and, all this stuff she took advantage of my emotional state at that time. Like when I hadn't seen my baby, I was like, I don't have nobody. I'm doing this by myself, basically type thing. Like I got me and me only. And I think she turned that into the context I had no support system, which was just not true. It was like a high stress like level, like because I already knew that they were gonna take her. Did I think in a million years that they were going to railroad me so that she was adopted? No. And I just find it's crazy that California, since they implemented the adoption incentives in 1998, I think it was, in 1998 till now, out of all those years, 7 years, California received $0. Yet they're still received the second highest, I think it's like 66 million in grants, right under Texas. Because they get this money for adopting children out of foster care, and they get even more money when that child is developmentally delayed or has special needs. They put my daughter in speech therapy at 6 months to get that extra $4,000, I guess. I mean, I've never in my life heard of a 6-month-old baby put in speech therapy.
That's weird, yeah. So when the social worker first came, did she come by herself? Did she come with police officers?
Nope, she came by herself when she did the intake interview. Because there's a social worker at the hospital, then there's the social worker for the intake, CPS, whatever, does the investigation or whatever, and then they, I guess, transfer you off to their actual social worker, which is really just does what she's told by the person who you never even get to meet, really.
And so when she came to do the thing, what did she say it was strictly because of the drug use, and that was it?
They said I did. Well, she didn't tell me these things. She basically just asked me questions about my past, and she used every single word I said against me. Okay, when I was like, I tried to I was praising myself because I was a past alcoholic. For many years, I was 318 pounds. My liver was. They wanted me to get extra tests done on my liver. That's how bad of an alcoholic I was, always drunk, and I kicked that on myself, and I haven't drank in 7 years. I have not had one drink of alcohol in 7 years, and I did that myself, and I grew up just drinking, through high school, middle school, all that, just drinking. My grandma was alcoholic, my grandpa was alcoholic, but they used, instead of, what I thought was, maybe showing them that my addictions to drugs can be overcome. It's not something that's that's, I'm not helpless, but they turned it into basically that I was pretty much helpless, you know? So like, they just turned everything. They used my juvenile history against me to say that my daughter was at risk. That's what they told me. They used a disorderly conduct where I got like a drunk in public, like in 2008. And I wasn't even drunk. It was just because I was not 21. So I went to the drunk tank for having one shot. And like all of that was used against me. I'm like, 2008, like you've got to be kidding me. Like,
Wow.
So I went to jail, and they had sent the jurisdictional report, whatever, to my house in Placer County, which I almost didn't even go to Placer. Almost didn't stop at my house. I was going to go just straight to Redding, but I ended up stopping at my house in Lincoln, California, and I ended up finding the paperwork there for the jurisdiction report, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm reading it, and it says that I did so much drugs while pregnant, that she was born dead, that she had to be resuscitated, and, you know, there's this attachment, and, you know, but yet none of them were attached to anything. I never got to see him until, like, just recently when my rights already terminated. Like, so I never even really had a fair chance to fight nothing, because my lawyer was telling me one thing, and I knew different.
Right. So when they took the baby, did she end up going to a foster house, or did she go with
She went to a foster mother who, right now, I have a great relationship with her. You know, throughout the first part of the case, like, she really actually became like my best support person. You know,
That's awesome.
always to give me words of encouragement, you know, and like, you know, like, she'll send me pictures of the baby, and I have not received not one picture from from my daughter's grandma. I've asked, yeah, hey, can you send me pictures? Not one picture, nothing. But the foster mom would send me pictures, you know, like, and we would talk a lot, you know, and we just started catching CPS and like lies.
Right.
Tell her one thing and tell me another thing, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, you know, and we're like, that's not right, you know, and they caught on to that because I have a big mouth and I'll stick up, but I'm like, dude, like, you guys are wrong for doing that, you know, whoop de whoop. And so they actually ended up pulling my daughter from the foster mom, I think because of the fact that we were, like, they literally told her she had to cut off all communication with me.
Wow.
And she's like, you know, and she did for a little bit, you know, she distanced herself, and I felt it and I knew it. And I was like, something's just not right, you know. And then finally we started kind of talking, and she told me, she's like, you know, they told me, like, I can't talk to you, like, so just please don't tell them I'm talking, don't tell them I'm talking to you. You know?
Yeah, and of course,
Right.
you know, at that time right now, it's about the baby, so you got to do what you have to do. That's just sad. That sucked.
And, like, so they ended up pulling her from, you know, the one person that my daughter's known her entire life, pretty much. And after, like, one overnight visit, she was permanently moved with his mom, you know, 5 hours away from where I live. You know, and, like, my baby's daddy, it's in the court papers, the assessment, you know, he talks about how he grew up in a violent home life. His mother had three CPS referrals. They were all unfounded, but I can understand why, because she's a good liar and a good manipulator, you know. And since the day that paternity test came in and that social worker was able to talk to his mom, it was a wrap, dude. She did nothing but talk shit. Like, if he would call his mom, he was talking about, like, you know, that we're fighting or whatever. The first call she would make after that was to the social worker. Oh, they're fighting, just basically portraying her own son, because he would tell her all the time, like, I want my daughter to be with her mother. I want my daughter to be with her mother, you know. And she had literally, I think the foster mom had asked her one time, like, hey, after one of the court dates that went really bad, she was like, hey, have you, talked to Andrew or Erica, are they okay or whatever? And then, don't you feel like that or whatever? And then she proceeded to respond that she didn't feel sorry for me, but she felt sorry for my son, that he fell in love with somebody like me. And, like, basically I'm this big, horrible person, yet he was the one in prison. You know, he was the one going on high-speed chases with guns and dope in under his seat. Not me, but I'm the bad person, you know? Like, it's just crazy. His sister did like 6 or 7 years for voluntary manslaughter. And she's around my daughter all the time. She's constantly threatening, oh, I should have killed you before you were able to take my fucking brother's life with the pipe. And like, literally, these are public fucking posts she's putting all over Facebook, making threats to me, like about killing me and all kinds of stuff. I was out there, I literally got jumped by some of her friends telling me to stay away from her brother, you know, and I'm like, and I told the social worker about these things, and she said that those things don't depict his mom or the grandmother. I'm like, okay, but these are the kids that she raised. These are, you know, this is the characters of her family. They're all gang members. Like, she married her husband in prison. You know, she has 2 different baby daddies. Both of them do drugs. You know, like her current boyfriend right now that I had actually seen walking my daughter in a stroller around their friggin' apartment one day, because I was out there maybe being a little bit stalkerish. Hopefully they don't see that, but I seen him. He does drugs. I know I've seen him do drugs. You know, and he's out there, you know, strolling my daughter around in her stroller, and I'm like, and I have not had one single visit where I didn't have a fucking camera, where I didn't have a camera recording me and a 2-way mirror or a 1-way mirror with somebody behind it watching me with my daughter. Like I'm a monster, like I'm a serious monster. One time I was in a visit, and so me and the baby daddy, we were like, not arguing, but we were about to be arguing, so I was like, I'm not going to do that in the CPS office, obviously. So I went and I took a walk. He was holding my baby daddy. First of all, he's partially like disabled. He doesn't have no real function of his right arm or his right leg because of gang violence. He was stabbed a bunch of times when he was 17, and he was in a coma for 6 months because she failed to protect him. And so he only has real function of his left side, you know, but he was sitting down with her, you know, there was nothing dangerous about me leaving her in that room with these cameras on him and people watching her, you know, like, but when I came back, they had ripped her from his arms, you know, 2 workers, and were telling me that it was dangerous for me to have left her alone with him in the CPS visiting room. And I'm like, and then proceeded to accuse me of leaving to go get high. And I literally, that same day, they sent me to the probation department for a drug test, and I turned in a clean drug test. And they still proceeded to cut my visits. They cut my visits. And I would talk to the foster mom and be like I just knew every single time they were going to pull a dirty move on me. And I would be talking to the foster mom about it, like, oh, I just know they're going to cancel my visits. They're going to cut. I know, I feel it. She's like, no, they can't do that. They can't do that. They're not going to do it, you know, but every single time I was right. Well, like, literally, I'll tell her, and then, like, 5 minutes later, I'm getting a phone call, and now I only got 1 visit a month for 1 hour. I didn't see my daughter because of the COVID for the whole, like, it was like 3-4 months. I didn't even get to see her. It was only on video camera. You know, and she'd been with the baby daddy's mom, you know, so, like, I had a visit right before my termination, parental rights. And when I grabbed her, you know, from her, she like started really crying, which is understandable because she's been with her, you know, that's who she's attached to. You know, she started really crying, but they left, and I finally got her to calm down, you know. And within that 2 hours, I had a great visit, you know. And then when they took her from me, she started like crying, like, no, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave her, you know. And I've since she was born, like, I started out with 3 visits a week, and then the next month, 2 visits a week. The next month after that, it was 1 visit a week, but for 3 hours, and it just constantly was a decrease in my visits. And, like, you know, I thought, even though I did turn in some dirty drug tests, you know, because at the time, like, it was hard. It was hard to do that, with, you know, having to go through that emotional of seeing my baby one day and then having to leave her, and then just on and off, like, just all that, the craziness, and my boyfriend having mental, having brain damage and you have mental disorders and having to do with that at the same time because I wanted my daughter to have a family. And at the end of the day, because I was trying so hard to look stable, like she was going to have two parents, I really, at the end of the day, I only ruined it for myself because he ended up having to do more things than I did, nurturing fathers, psychological evaluation, all these things that he didn't do none of. I completed my counseling, my court orientation. I completed almost everything, and then when he got out of prison, trying to keep him on doing everything and then after this it went by so fast, and the foster lady was like, no, they'll extend it. I've seen it happen so many times. They'll extend it. But because they pushed my jurisdiction out so long, and then they contested a jurisdiction that I never even got to contest. So it drug it out so far that by the time I was at my 6-month review hearing, I had a month and a half until my 12 months. So the judge said, hey, I don't think you can, do the psychological evaluation and the counseling all in that time. But I'm thinking wait a minute, I don't have to do all those things. He does. Yeah. So why is that? Why are you saying that for me? I don't have to do those things. I did those things that I had to do. But at the day, it's still, he's like, the judge what do you think you're going to magically turn in clean drug tests and magically do psychological evaluations and really all I had was a month and a half of outpatient to do. And I could have done that technically in that month and a half, but really I couldn't because there was no outpatient during COVID-19, period. Right. There was not even an NA meeting. I did some online. There were some, I was able to connect online or whatever, but I did an online parenting class. They wouldn't accept it. In fact, when I started mentioning it about the online parenting class, the deputy counsel was like, objection. Every single time I tried to even speak, they terminated my parental rights, and I didn't get to say not one word. Yeah. They didn't let me say not one word at that 1-minute hearing, and they took my daughter from me permanently. Terminated my rights in a fucking 1-minute hearing that the baby daddy never even showed up to. Why? Because what is he really? He's not going to physically take care of her anyways. He knows that, but he's going to be in her life. There's going to be no problem with that. That's his mother has his daughter, but for me, it's not the same, I'm not going to get to see her. And it's just messed up because he's the one that really didn't do anything. And I tried, and I feel like I should have got my reunification services extended.
What was all on your case plan?
It was maintain safe visiting, do the visiting, which I did. I literally would, because when I moved to Burning, California, I literally would have to walk 4 miles in the snow. I swear to God, 4 miles in the snow to the bus stop at 4 o'clock in the morning to take that bus an hour all the way to Redding, California for my visit. And I was never late. I never missed a visit, except for one time I was late to one visit, and I had let them know I was going to be late, and it was because the bus driver, when it came up the mountain, they had to use the bathroom. So I was 20 minutes late, and you're not allowed to be more than 15 minutes late. But I told them I was going to be late. They're like, just hurry up and get there, And when I got there, I ran in there and everything. They're like, oh yeah, it was been past 15 minutes, so they canceled my visit. And that's the exact time they put me on one visit for 1 hour a month. Wow. And I'm like, it's so crazy that they have so much power to just do that, Just they could have put me on family maintenance if they didn't want to extend my reunification. Why not do family maintenance? Why were they decreasing things when I was turning in clean drug tests? Why were they decreasing my visits instead of trying to maybe set up, visits at the park, where I didn't have CPS or camera watching me like that? Or why didn't they let me, have her at home for the weekend? I have a house. I still have a house. They don't haven't come not one time to check my house, but yet they say that it is undeterminable whether or not I have suitable and safe housing for my daughter. They railroaded me. They railroaded me. It's not fucking fair. It's not fair. That's my daughter. That's my baby. And they took my baby. All because what? I have an addiction. I would have never harmed her. There are people who do drugs and do not ever harm their children. I'm sorry, people drink alcohol. That's a drug. I'm not condoning nothing, but they have done studies in Hawaii, where meth is a big thing out there. They have done studies on the outcomes of babies who mothers used methamphetamine prenatal while they were in the womb. And there is no different outcome than smoking cigarettes. Okay, low birth weight, maybe a small head, premature labor. That's it. Same side effects for meth, okay? And although it's frowned upon to smoke cigarettes while pregnant, it's not illegal. You're not going to get your baby taken. But smoking cigarettes will do just as much harm to your child as smoking meth would. And I'll guarantee you they're probably smoking more cigarettes than they are somebody that's smoking meth while they're pregnant. People do have consciences on that,
Yeah.
I messed up, and I know I messed up, and I know that. But termination of your parental rights, that's a death penalty, and I don't feel like they had the right to do that to me with their evidence, their wannabe evidence that none of it's even true. And I submitted my own JV 180, and I submitted the news article of the daughter who went to prison for voluntary manslaughter, and how the grandmother's boyfriend, one of his sons is in prison for murder, and one of his other sons died the same way that her son almost died. My baby daddy. I submitted these. I submitted my medical records that stated that she did not have to be resuscitated. That I submitted my paperwork that showed that they couldn't get a test on her umbilical cord. I submitted my papers in a JV 180 and I requested a terminated jurisdiction due to the fact that had my evidence been presented the way it should have been in the beginning of the jurisdiction, they should have never took jurisdiction, because none of that, the evidence that they put was false. It's not true. It's all hearsay. And I have actual medical records, and it made no difference. Made no difference.
Isn't it crazy that they can do that with the paperwork with the baby, saying that they had to resuscitate her? My cousin, her baby was the opposite. When he came out, because I was there, and she delivered him, they had to resuscitate him and do all of this stuff, and they did not put it in the paperwork. She was crowning for, I think it was 20 or 30 minutes before they delivered the baby, and he wasn't breathing, because when they get in the birth canal right there, it's there's no oxygen coming. So he was without oxygen and ended up having major seizures for a few years, all of this stuff. And she had no idea that he had all these problems when he was born, because it wasn't documented. And she was having her own problems, so she wasn't even aware that they were doing CPR and stuff on him. And I had it all recorded.
My friend was there. She was my baby wasn't resuscitated. Now I have a friend whose baby was had to be resuscitated, was basically really born dead, but it came back to life. And they had to they did a death certificate and a birth certificate for that baby. So he to this day, he had, for his son who's alive, he has a death certificate and a birth certificate from his kid, dying at birth, basically. And I was just like, it's crazy. I was in the hospital, it's crazy too. So when I woke up after the C-section, I woke up and there was a doctor in there praying on me, like literally praying on me. She was like, oh, I woke up and I'm like, what the heck? She's like, oh, she's like, is this okay? And I'm like, not really, makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not a religious person at all, And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, and she left. And then I look on my bedside table thing, and there's a poem sitting there talking about I am meth, not upside down, like literally just face up, And ever since then, like the nurses treated me like crap, like I was just like the scum of the earth. They treated me so bad, and like 5 minutes later, that same doctor that was praying on me, she came back in, and she's the one that told me that she was going to make the police report. And I feel like she did that because of my religious views. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Bethel. I don't know if you've heard of Bethel, but out here Bethel is like a really, like they're blowing up all crazy. Like they are very influential in this town, and they tried to resurrect a baby one time. But this lady who did the CPS, she does speeches at this church, this mega church, is what they call it or whatever. But these same people literally, you can look it up later, like they literally try to raise a baby that was dead for like 5 days from the dead. They took it from the hospital, whatever, brought it to the church, and was like chanting like these things saying, I'm probably gonna get hit for this, you know that? I'm just kidding. But they like literally were like trying to pray this baby back to life, and I'm like, that has got to be the most craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like this baby was dead for 5 days. Like there's scientifically no way possible, like, but that's just how like weird that this count. I don't know what it is. Like it could be multiple factors of why they did this to me, and on every level, from my abuse at the hospital to me telling off the social worker at the hospital, to my initial caseworker just getting nothing but shit talk to her from the baby daddy's mom, like I'm not a bad person. And, anybody who really ever, if they would have ever, the social workers or whatever actually took the time to really get to know who I am. I've raised 3 kids, 3 wonderful kids. They weren't my kids, but
Right.
like, none of them went to prison for manslaughter or almost lost their life, like from gang violence. They go to college in Indiana, and, like they're good kids. And I was a product of that, like, and I took care of people dying. Like people trusted me with their dying freaking parents and stuff, like, or with their lives.
Are you still doing that job?
I am, but like it's kind of not. But like right this second, I'm not. It's at the, with them, basically everything I'm going through and how it's really emotional. Losing my daughter. It's just like I can't take care of somebody right now when I can't even take care of myself because I'm so like damaged. It's so horrible. Like sometimes I'll just sit there and I'm like a zombie because it's so painful, and they don't understand what they're doing to people, and it's not okay. It's not okay that they can have so much power to make me feel that way. Like, it's fucked up.
Now let me ask you. You said that you lost your parental rights. Are you going to try to fight and get
I already
that?
put in my appeal. I submitted an appeal, but I don't know if I did it right, or I did the writ, and then my lawyer sent me a letter saying she felt there was no reason to file a writ petition because, everything looks good by the books or whatever. I don't know, but I submitted the appeal. I'm supposed to get, I guess I asked for appellate counsel, I checked a little box saying I had counsel appointed, and so I checked the box to receive appellate counsel. But with that whole adoption incentive stuff, I'm going to go. The appellate court is still California court. California is still receiving money for adopting my daughter out of the foster care. So I don't feel like it's really gonna help either. So, but I did. Am I gonna not try? Hell yeah, I'm gonna try.
And just because you lost your rights, the grandma, she still isn't gonna let you see the baby, huh?
Nope. She doesn't even want me to see the baby when she's literally court ordered to do it. I have they call it my goodbye visit is on Monday. A goodbye visit.
Meaning what?
She's just a biological grandparent that is adopting her, and I'm still having a goodbye visit, so that tells you something, right?
Where is the dad? Does he live? Does he live there?
He doesn't live with his mom. He's over there all the time. He probably stays the night, I'm sure, like, even though he's not
lost his rights.
Yes, he lost his rights also.
Is
he didn't even show up to the court hearing.
Is he at all like saying to his mom, please let her see the baby? Or is he against that?
I believe that he is, well, I don't know what he's doing, honestly, because, like, he's a mama's boy. He's always been, like, I cannot say not one bad thing about his mom because he'll, like, be mad about it. Like, it's just hard to tell. Like, he'll say one thing to me, but, I don't know if I believe it anymore, like, I almost feel like he did, because as soon as everything was closed, like reunification services terminated and everything, he stole a Corvette up where we live to try to go back home to where his mom is and leave me. He stole a Corvette to leave me. He got caught for stealing it. But, like, as soon as, like, the case was over, he was gone. He's gone. We're not together. He's not with me. And I almost feel like him and his mom plotted it almost on purpose. I don't want to believe it because I don't, but at the same time, when I think about it, it's just like, why would he just up and leave like that at that time, like, why did he start acting all crazy and trying to steal tow trucks and Corvettes and stuff, and, like, his mom was sending the sheriffs to my house doing welfare checks on him, like, all kinds of crazy stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Man, I'm really sorry. So, my question that I always end with is, what would you tell all the people that are listening that could be going through this or don't know anything about this, or what would you tell everybody?
I don't know, just don't talk. Don't talk. Don't talk about anything, I guess. I don't know. I've literally tried everything that I thought possible, I read the laws and I read CPS training manuals and I read the attorney dog book and everything, and I can identify so much that they have done that's, like, illegal, and I can raise those questions to them, but I don't get answers. I don't get answers. If your child is chosen to fulfill a certain number you know, within the county or within the state, that's where it doesn't matter what you do, because once your child becomes that number for them, that's what it's gonna be. That's where they're gonna stay, and you know, that's what it is. What it is. Everything comes down to money. I got a money hand. I got a tattoo of money sign on my hand. I know. You know, the world's about money. You think the government's any different? Hell no. Money, numbers.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry. I keep fighting. Keep fighting.
I feel like she'll find me when she gets older. You know, because this lady, she might be good with babies. I'm not saying she's gonna abuse my daughter as a baby, or you know, she's probably good with babies and all that. But as you know, teenagers, and I know I was best friends with her daughter. You know, the one that went to jail for manslaughter. Like, you know, she does not have a good track record with the older kids, and she's gonna find me. You know.
Yeah.
And she'll know the truth, regardless of what they say. She'll know because she's my daughter, and she'll have that same feeling that I have, that it was wrong.
Well, good luck, Erica.
And I don't care what CPS says, God don't like ugly. God does not like ugly, and that agency is ugly.
It is, and he's going to reveal the truth. So, well, I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you for doing this. And like I said, good luck.
Bye.